They were in the shadow cabinet, though. They weren't just, odds and sods on the back benches. And now they're in government. They're like, it doesn't matter. We're making the calls. We're having great diplomatic relations. James, it's funny, isn't it? They act like a load of pathetic, sixth form debating society leftists when they're in opposition. I kind of think with someone like Donald Trump, he'll be like, yeah, whatever. I don't think that man actually bears a grudge. The fact that J.D. Vance is his running mate.
Remember when the UK-US special relationship seemed unshakable? That was before Angela Rayner decided to take aim at Donald Trump on live television, unleashing a diplomatic firestorm that's now threatening Britain's economic stability. Within days, Trump and J.D. Vance responded with more than just words. They've put specific UK industries in their crosshairs. Steel, aluminium, and manufacturing jobs now hang in the balance as Rayner scrambles to contain the damage from her impulsive comments.
Says it all. But I'm pretty sure that the Trump machinery, or people who are now going to be occupying important positions in the White House, might kind of be looking at Britain with a slightly different view.
And as you say, Alex, I think the video that's been doing the rounds this week is about a video from 2020 when Angela Rayner wasn't in Jeremy Corbyn's shadow cabinet, she was in Keir Starmer's shadow. He was telling me that, people will remember those comments. Those comments, are not harmless. People will remember them in the machinery. And of course, when we have the leaders appearing on the world stage, it's very likely, for instance, that members of the international press or members of the international community may well bring up those comments once again.
The question is, can the UK economy afford the price of her political posturing? Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favour. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great! Thank you so much. Now back to the video. The economic foundation of what many called the special relationship between the United Kingdom and United States was nothing short of remarkable before Angela Rayner's explosive comments. For decades, the two nations had cultivated an intricate web of trade agreements spanning everything from financial services to manufactured goods. This wasn't merely a transactional relationship, but a strategic alliance that penetrated the deepest levels of both governments. Defence contracts worth billions flowed between Washington and London, while intelligence agencies shared critical information seamlessly, creating an unparalleled level of trust rarely seen in international diplomacy. Then came the fateful broadcast that would upend everything.
He's an absolute buffoon. He has no place in the White House. He's an embarrassment, and he should be ashamed of himself. Donald Trump is killing, thousands of Americans by giving them duff advice, and he's macho, I'm all right, look at me, I've survived COVID.
During what should have been a routine television appearance, Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner unleashed a blistering critique of former President Trump that crossed every conceivable diplomatic red line. Her comments weren't just politically charged, they were personal, questioning not only Trump's policies, but his character and competence in ways that sent immediate shockwaves through diplomatic channels. Within hours, phones were ringing off the hook in Whitehall as panicked civil servants scrambled to contain what was rapidly evolving into a full-blown diplomatic crisis. The response from across the Atlantic came with devastating precision. Trump, never one to let a perceived slight go unanswered, bypassed the usual diplomatic channels entirely. Instead of making vague threats or expressing generic disappointment, he targeted his response with surgical precision at the economic heart of Labour's traditional strongholds. The former president, drawing on his extensive experience using tariffs as political weapons, identified the UK's vulnerable steel and aluminium sectors, industries that employ thousands in northern England and Wales, as his point of attack. What made this situation truly unprecedented was J.D. Vance's immediate and vocal support. By publicly backing Trump's retaliatory measures, Vance transformed what might have been dismissed as a typical Trump outburst into a serious bipartisan stance. His involvement brought additional Republican weight behind the threats, effectively isolating the UK in what was rapidly becoming an economic and diplomatic nightmare. This unexpected alliance sent Labour strategists into a tailspin as they realised the threat had genuine political momentum behind it. The proposed tariffs weren't just symbolic, they represented an existential threat to communities already hanging by a thread. Since Brexit, the UK's steel and aluminium industries had been struggling to maintain their competitive edge in global markets. Trump's threat of imposing 50% tariffs specifically on these sectors, while exempting EU countries, was a masterstroke of economic warfare. It would effectively price British products out of the American market while giving their European competitors an insurmountable advantage. Internal Labour Party communications, later leaked to the press, revealed absolute chaos in the hours following Trump's announcement. Economic advisors worked through the night, calculating potential job losses, with preliminary estimates suggesting tens of thousands of positions at risk in key Labour constituencies. The political implications were equally devastating. These were precisely the working-class voters who had returned Labour to power, now facing unemployment due to what many perceived as needless diplomatic provocation. The contrast between Prime Minister Keir Starmer's initial response and subsequent actions spoke volumes. When first informed of Rayner's comments, Starmer reportedly dismissed concerns, suggesting that Trump's previous threats against allies had rarely materialised into concrete action. This complacency evaporated within hours as economic projections landed on his desk, prompting a flurry of emergency meetings with both economic advisors and US diplomatic representatives. Sources within Number 10 described a prime minister visibly shaken by the potential consequences of what was quickly being labelled Rayner's blunder in Westminster corridors. The specific details of Trump's retaliatory plan sent tremors through Britain's financial markets. His threat to slap 50% tariffs on British steel and aluminium while offering exemptions to EU countries was masterfully designed to maximise both economic and political damage. This wasn't just about punishing the UK, it was about specifically punishing Labour by targeting industries concentrated in their political heartlands. Financial analysts predicted that such tariffs would effectively eliminate British competitiveness in the American market, potentially forcing plant closures within months rather than years. Moreover, the crisis transcended purely economic concerns. Security officials expressed grave concerns that the diplomatic rift might compromise the extensive intelligence sharing arrangements between the two countries, arrangements that form the backbone of the UK's national security apparatus. Defence cooperation, joint military exercises, and counter-terrorism operations suddenly seemed precarious, with potentially dire consequences for British security interests globally. The UK now finds itself in a political quagmire with far-reaching economic implications. What began as a brief war of words has escalated into a genuine threat to British livelihoods. The fallout from Rayner's comments extends well beyond diplomatic tensions, potentially derailing post-Brexit trade negotiations at a time when economic stability hangs in the balance. This political miscalculation reveals a crucial truth about modern governance. Careless rhetoric carries tangible costs for ordinary citizens. While diplomatic channels scramble to mitigate damage, markets react in real time to the uncertainty. The true test for Britain lies ahead. Can it salvage international alliances while protecting domestic industries from becoming collateral damage in this self-inflicted diplomatic crisis?